when you're giving a presentation, other than picking the topic, that's usually the first step. The second step is to actually create your message, create the materials for your presentation that you want to share with other people. But what is that process like? How are you supposed to write it? What goes into your writing or into your message? And how do you incorporate evidence into it? I'm going to explain the general writing process for a message. In particular, I'm going to cover the structure of a message via a preparation outline, researching evidence of primary and secondary sources, evaluating evidence based on the CRAAP test, and incorporating evidence as citations in your message. What are preparation outlines? Preparation outlines are essentially outlines that are formatted with labels and have subordination and coordination. Preparation outlines, in essence, are full sentence documents with a substantive message. Imagine a transcript or something like that. A preparation outline is just the entirety of what your message is. Even if you don't say everything word for word, a preparation outline helps you structure your message and helps you create enough content in it so that way it is properly explicated to your audience. Preparation outlines also incorporate evidence in your introduction and main points through the type of oral citations. So anything you say, you have to back up what you say with evidence. And with a preparation outline, you will know exactly how to incorporate evidence into your message. Lastly, preparation outlines usually have an academic bibliography page at the end, either in APA format or MLA format or CMS. For those of you who don't know, an academic bibliography page is a list of all the evidence you used and where you got it from. A bibliography page at the very end of your document is essentially references, oh, here's all the evidence I used and here's where I found it, and has all the source information for the citations. So to summarize, preparation outlines are full sentence documents that have a substantive message that are specifically formatted in the structure of an outline with labels, subordination, and coordination, and incorporate an MLA or APA or CMS bibliography page at the end of your document. But I know what you're thinking now, how or what evidence do I put into my message? That comes down to you researching evidence. There are two types of evidence, primary sources and secondary sources. Primary sources are things like interviews or in testimony, in surveys, and focus groups. Essentially, primary sources are first-hand accounts of information. You're getting the milk directly from the cow, but not every time will you have a chance to interview somebody or conduct a focus group. Sometimes getting primary sources is a heavy load task, and you cannot do that. In most instances, you're going to be using secondary sources. Secondary sources are second-hand knowledge, such as something that you might see in an academic journal or a government report or news articles or books or statistical databases or expert opinions or layperson opinions. Essentially, secondary sources are when there is a primary source, somebody else sort of took the primary source information and then paraphrased or reinterpreted or changed the language of the information and then took that information and then provided it to somebody else. So a secondary source is sort of second-hand information. Just like if you had any younger siblings, you probably get second-hand clothes. Now, once you get research, how do you know it's good? Like, how do you know it's usable to use in your message? Well, in order to evaluate evidence, you got to think of CRAAP, C-R-A-A-P. The CRAAP test is an acronym for currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose. By evaluating evidence on those 5 items, you will critically think and get an idea on not only the validity of the information, but also its utility in your message. Currency is not money. Currency is about how new or recent information is. Is the evidentiary source Did it get published last year, or is it 40 years out of date? Relevancy is about how the information relates to your message. For example, if you're giving a presentation about the dangers of certain types of wolves, the research that you're finding about wolves, or is it about cheetahs? You got to remember that even if you find evidence, that it has to directly relate to what you're talking about, to either your thesis or the point you're making. Authority has to do with the relevant credibility of who made the information or where the information is coming from. Using the topic of the danger of wolves, if you find a source, is the information coming from an expert who has worked with wolves for 30 years? Is it maybe a younger person who has a husky and parallels between huskies and wolves? Think about evidentiary sources. You also have to evaluate if you can trust the information, not only the information, but also who's giving you the information, and does their expertise directly relate to the things they are talking about. C has to do with how valid or correct the information is. Sometimes this is really hard to figure out, but usually you can evaluate the accuracy of information by trying to see if that same information on other sources. Because usually, if something is true, there will be other people or websites or books that have the same information which validate that, oh, if other people who are credible say that this is correct, then this is likely more correct or more valid. Purpose. Why was the information created? It's created because a medical doctor, was doing medical research on wolves attacks hurt people, or is the information created by a hunter who's trying to sell wolf repellent or bullets that can kill wolves more easily? You also need to consider that information always has a purpose. There is always a reason why the information was created. Was it made to just teach people something, to inform them, or was it made to sell a product or a service? Or was it made to troll people and to just not be true and to lie to people? Once you have all that, it all comes down to how do you incorporate the evidence into your message? And to that, you need to use citations in your message. There are different types of citations. In this class, there are 2 citations you're going to need to use. You're going to need to use oral citations, message, and then bibliographic citations for your references page. Oral citation is when you say where you get information and when you paraphrase or quote the information. So if I was going to talk about football, for example, and what it takes to be a good football team, I might say that according to NFL football coach legend Vince Lombardi, in his memoir, and he specifically talks about the importance of having cohesion. And in his book, he talks about how oftentimes cohesion is the most important thing, because even if you have a bunch of great players, if they don't know how to work together, then you just have a bunch of ingredients. And it takes cohesion to put it all together to make the good gumbo of team success. Oral citation, again, is where you say you get information from, and then you paraphrase or you quote the information. You quote the source or you paraphrase it. Inside of your message, you will need to have a bibliography page. A bibliographic citation is an academic citation that shows exactly as much source information as possible. Typically, you'll see bibliographic citations in reference pages, such as a reference page or an MLA works cited page. At the very end of your message, you need to have a list of where you got all the information. Bibliographic citation varies based on the style, but generally, a bibliographic citation includes the author's names, the title of their article, their report, the book or the newspaper website it came from, when the published, like the date of when the information came out, that when you accessed the information, like on what date you accessed the information from, and then also, lastly, specifically, did you get the information? If you found it on a website, what is the URL? What is the DOI? What specific web address did you go to find the information? Types of citations, I'm not really going to go over, but other college courses or in writing, there are something in text citations. Now, again, for this class, you do not need to use in-text citations, but generally, in-text citations include parenthetical citations, narrative citations, numerical citations, footnotes. Parenthetical citation is a piece of writing. You have paraphrase or a quote of information, then at the end of the sentence, before the period, you have the source information in parentheses. Most likely the author's name and the article or the book name, or the article name and then the year it came out. So a parenthetical citation is when you have a note in parentheses of where you got the information from in a piece of writing. Narrative citation is sort of like an oral citation in that you sort of try to, in a nice way, say where the information comes from. A narrative citation is sort of like a combination of an oral citation and a parenthetical citation. A narrative citation would sound something like Green mentions the importance of having positivity during cancer treatment. And then in parentheses might be the video, the YouTube video that he mentions that in. So a narrative citation is when you sort of orally mention where you get the information, but then also in parentheticals, you have other reference information. Numerical citation is a type of citation. It's like a parenthetical citation, but rather than having some source information in parentheses or something like that, you would put number in brackets into the information, and that number corresponds to the reference in your bibliography page. Ever seen a Wikipedia article? If you read the Wikipedia article, you'll see it'll have a sentence, and then at the end of the sentence, it'll have a number in brackets. If you click on that number, or if you number and then you go all the way down to the reference page, and then you see, oh, number 1, and then you see the reference number 1, you have the reference information. A numerical citation is usually used for more scientific studies, or when you have so much references that parentheticals or narrative or all citations are just bulky. So numerical citations, the numbers in the brackets, are an easy way to help reference, okay, I got this information here, but you got to check out this number in my reference page. To recap, you can even deliver a message to an audience, you have to prepare it. The way to prepare it is to, number 1, use a preparation outline. Use a structured template that has an outline with labels and subordination and coordination, so that way you can write a full sentence document with a substantive message, and that incorporates evidence message with some type of bibliography page at the end. You find research, you will want to try as best you can incorporate different types of evidence. Primary sources are the best first-hand knowledge, but if you can't use those, you want to use secondary sources such as academic journals or expert opinions or news articles or books or layperson on a topic that they have experience in. Evaluating evidence, you want to use the CRAAP test. You want to evidence based on its currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose. Once you have the evidence and you evaluate it, you want to incorporate it. And the way you can incorporate evidence into your speech or argument is to use quotations in the body of your message. And if you're writing out your message, you would have the list at the very end in the form of a bibliographic citation list, such as an MLA works cited page or an APA reference page. On how can you get a presentation ready? I hope you learned stuff. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.